Today we're going to continue on in the book of Daniel. We're going to go to chapter 3. That's what we'll keep doing right until we get to chapter 6, and then we'll move on to something else. If I can breathe and talk after eating all that food and running back down and getting my water. And so everybody bow our heads and we go to the Lord in prayer before we get started today. Father, in the name of Jesus, we come to you today. Pray, Lord, that you'd help us today to study the Word of God. Help us, oh Father, to have open hearts, and help us, oh Lord, to be willing to be obedient unto you and to hear the voice of God and to learn something from this lesson today, Father, how that we need to be steadfast in our faith for God and how that we need to be ready and be willing to stand the tests that come before us and the trials that we might endure and be faithful to you. Help us to have a made-up mind, Father, and have it made up beforehand, that we would not transgress your will and your laws. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Got more books here and I know what to do with. But anyway, I really didn't study this lesson much again either, very little. So we'll just do the best we can today. And the title of today's lesson, we'll continue on in chapter 3, the book of Daniel, is Another in the Fire. And this is a very familiar story, and we've heard it preached on numerous times, and we've all probably already have our mind on what it is, but another title for this lesson we might say is to bow or burn. And that's what it boiled down to. So I'll go ahead and read the introduction here. It says, introduction, God speaks through his God can speak through wholly devoted to him. God can speak through those who are wholly devoted to him. Daniel chapter 2 serves as a fundamental lesson for the rest of the book. Daniel chapter 2, I'm in the wrong daggone. Another in the fire. I had the wrong page on that and the right page on this. And you have to pray for me. It says, by faith, Christians can stand firm when tempted to compromise. So lots of times when we're tempted, sometimes we might compromise. If we don't already have a made-up mind, if we're not already prayed up and read up, sometimes we will compromise because of the temptations and pressures of the world. Daniel 3 illustrates the power of steadfast faith when faced with tremendous pressure and imminent danger. The lesson explores three key themes: resisting compromise, fiercely upholding our beliefs, and witnessing God's remarkable intervention. Nebuchadnezzar's pride promotes his demand for worship, leading to rage when he is challenged. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego amplified unshakable dedication, refusing to bow to false idols despite the perilous consequences. In the end, God's miraculous rescue astonishes the king, shifting his awe into reverence for the one true God. This narrative inspires us to remain resolute and to trust God. Today's lesson offers a striking contrast to the previous one when Nebuchadnezzar's dream unveiled God's judgment against idolatrous nations. Notably, Daniel was absent. In this book today, we're not even going to read about Daniel. Daniel's not even mentioned in chapter 3. It's going to be about the three, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So the exact time of this is unclear, and we do know that a period of time had expired between chapter 2 and chapter 3. There's some discussion or some disputes about how much time. Some say as much as 10 years had passed, but a period of time had transpired. And this chapter kind of goes along with chapter 2. It leads right into it. But we know in chapter 2 how that Daniel interpreted, the king had a dream, and he wanted somebody to tell him what the dream was and interpret it, and Daniel was able to do that. And then when Daniel was able to do that, he said there was no other God like Daniel's God. He was the God of gods and he was the God of gods and the Lord of kings. And then remember how they wouldn't eat from the king's table, but they had a special diet that they went ahead and ate of vegetables and grains and nuts, and then after the period of time, they were much better than the other ones that eat from the king's table. Matter of fact, when he brought them in and looked at them and the wisdom and knowledge he had, what did he say about them? They were 10 times better than all the rest of the king's officials. So how do you think that made all the other king's officials feel? probably were jealous, wasn't they? And they probably, what did they probably say in their minds? I'll get back at those boys, huh? That's what we would think. They're going to get them, and that's probably what happened. I mean, the Bible. I know you can say the Bible don't say that. Well, there's a lot of things implied, but some people you tell them the Bible implies something, they really get. If the Bible don't say it, but anyway, we'll see. That's it. Kind of implies that they was kind of got you. So I'd say during this period of time, what did these other officials, these other magicians and Chaldeans, these other high officials, when they promoted them to a position, they were foreigners promoted to this position. They probably got jealous because they had some positions they thought they deserved. They probably was looking for what? A way to get even. And they probably was going to the king and telling him this and telling him that. And they probably told him, well, these Jewish boys, they won't worship these idol gods. And you see what he ended up doing. I think they kind of persuaded him and influenced him to do the things that he did here. Maybe not. That's just some suggestions but we really don't know why he did, but we'll see here in a minute what it was. But anyway, it says, no one enjoys testing, but it's necessary. Testing is God's process of refining his children. The Lord says, this third I will put through the fire and will refine them like silver and test them like gold. That's over in Zechariah 13 and 9. If you want, now when he says that, what's he talking about there? What's Zechariah talking about? What's Zechariah talking about in chapter 13? I'm just bringing this ain't part of this lesson, but since they mentioned it here in the commentary thing, he said he was going to bring a third through the fire. We know those prophecies, don't you? And when's those prophecies going to take place? Have they already taken place? Chapter 13, verse 1 says, in that day there shall be a fountain open to the house of David and the inhabitants of Israel. Verse 2, in that day it shall come to pass that, saith the Lord. Go on down to chapter 3, and it shall come to pass. And it shall come to pass in that day. Now what that day is when? The last days or that day. But you go on down to verse 9, it says, in that day, I mean, he's talking about that, still talking about that day. He said, I will bring the third part of them through the fire, and refine them as silver is refined, and will try them as gold is tried, and they shall call on my name, and I will hear them, and I will say, it is my people, and they shall say, the Lord is my God. Who is this? Who's this talking about? When's it going to happen? Israel. When? In the tribulation. They're going to be the time of Jacob's trouble. I know a lot of people think it's a church, but it might be Israel and a church, if that's your belief. It's but a third of them, remember how 2/3 of them, the Jews are going to be killed, but a third of them he's going to bring through the fire. He's going to bring them through the day of trouble, the time of Jacob's trouble, and he's going to bring them through that. Now, if you make no distinction between Israel and the church and say they're the same, that means the church will go through it too. If that's what you believe, it depends on how. If you see no separation between Israel and the church, you see them all the same, one and the same body, and if you see that just as tribulation and not part of wrath, if those judgments, if the tribulation judgment is not wrath, well then, yeah, some will say the church will go through that part. See, a lot of people put a separation between tribulation and from wrath. But we know wrath at least begins in chapter 6, so we know that wrath at least is a trumpet judgment, so we don't think we'll go through any of the trumpet judgments. Everybody's real quiet. So is there a difference between wrath and tribulation? Is the seals tribulation, or are they wrath, or are they? Is all those 21 judgments part of God's wrath? See, that's where there's great discussion. I ain't bringing that, but just something for you to think about. I mean, you just make up your own mind what camp you're in. So, but we know who you think that third is that's going to be brought through the fire. You think it's Jews? I think it's Israel. I don't think he's talking about the church. Myself. Now, the church may be right along there with them, because many believe that. That's just a little side note there. And we go on. It says, our trials are tests of our commitment to God. The test requires us to make a choice between good and evil. Our future is shaped by these choices. The choices we make reveal the condition of our hearts, because all choices are decided out of the depths and desires of the heart. A righteous person acts righteously. A loving person acts with love. A faithful person acts faithfully. Therefore, every choice is a test of our character. Furthermore, every choice is a test of our priorities. Moreover, every choice is an opportunity to be a witness, inasmuch as every choice has an effect on those around us, especially on our family and our friends. So our choices are important not only to us, but to all those around us. It shows us who we are and what our character. And sometimes we make what? You always make good choices? You might. But sometimes we make bad choices, don't we? Let's just go ahead and we'll go ahead and jump into scriptures. There's a lot to read here, and let's just go to Daniel chapter 3, verse 1. It says, "And Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura, in the province of Babylon." So Nebuchadnezzar made what? He made an image of what? Made an image of gold. Why do you think he made this? Why do you think he made an image of gold? More than likely, that's what most Bible scholars believe. If you remember this little thing I passed out the last time, Lily's putting some drawing on it, but remember how he made the statue of gold, and it had the different metals and the different materials, and each time the materials changed, it was changed in the kingdom. But Nebuchadnezzar, he told Nebuchadnezzar he was the head of gold, so that probably made him feel good and feel proud. So he made a golden statue. And most Bible scholars believe this is what inspired him to make a golden image, because he was the head of gold. So he made his statue how? All gold, like there would be no successor after him. He was going to stand forever. So he probably began to be, after time, he began to be puffed up and began to be prideful. So that's what most Bible scholars believe, that's the reason that he did that was because of the dream he had and the statue that he saw. But now, we don't have any exact description of the statue. Most people think it probably looked like that statue he described, but it was probably just all gold. Now, whether it was a statue of him or of one of their gods, there's dispute among that too. But at that period of time, the Babylonians didn't believe kings were divine, but they believed they had great power and authority. But they served all kinds of different idol gods, so it was probably made up to one of his idol gods as well. I don't mention which god it was, so you just have to take it as it is. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent together the princes. Now look who all he brought: the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the province to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So this was what? A grand celebration, wasn't it? He called everybody. Look who he called everybody. All these provinces that he ruled over. He called all of his officials and all the leading people and all the rulers of the land there, and brought them together for the dedication of this image. So then the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together unto the dedication of the image of Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image at Nebuchadnezzar. So they all got together, they all stood there before the image. So you can just picture this in your mind, how we do today, and we have an unveiling of a new statue or something, how we have all these people come, and great dignitaries and all these people come, and you have it there, and he's getting ready to unveil this image. He says, "Then an herald cried aloud, to you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages." So they had a herald, or they had somebody announce things. Got somebody hired just to announce things, and we might call him the master of ceremonies or whatever, but he began to herald out. But notice what he said: to you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages. So they was gathered there. See, Babylon had great territory, so these people that spoke different languages, and they brought them in. So he said nation. He didn't mean every nation in the world, but he meant nations that was under their rule and under their authority. Now, I think that's what it will mean under Antichrist. When he makes a decree that all should worship the beast, everybody ain't going. All countries ain't going to align with the Antichrist. If they did, there wouldn't be nobody to fight. Huh? I know he says it's going to be his desire to rule the whole world. If he's ruling the whole world, then nobody be against him. So when he makes a decree for everybody to take the mark, he says all the people it's under his authority, under his command, all the countries that he rules, and it's under his authority. And a lot of people say that Nebuchadnezzar is a type of what? A type of Antichrist. And we'll see that, why they say that a lot of them here in a minute. It says, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. And whosoever falleth not down and worship shall that same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Therefore, at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. So when he had his string band there, he had his rap band there, he had all of his musicians there, and when they sounded, people were to do what? They were commanded to bow down and worship. Now, what does that remind you of anything? What? What's going to happen in chapter 13 of the book of Revelations? Antichrist is going to set up the abomination desolate. He's going to set up in the temple, and he's going to command that everybody do what? Worship him, and everybody take a mark. See, that's why they say this is a type of the Antichrist, or a foreshadowing of the end times. How he's going to demand worship. The Antichrist is going to demand worship. He's going to want to be worshipped. He's going to want to put his mark and his stamp upon everybody. Let's see if I got anything else I want to say. We'll just leave it at that for now. But anyway, we see here that it says, wherefore at that time when certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. So when he commanded everybody to bow down, he said some of the Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. So they brought accusation against the Jews. And why do you think they brought accusation? Accusation, I mean, because they probably didn't bow down. Now, I don't know if all the Jews didn't bow down, but we do know the three that identifies here is the three by their Chaldean names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that they didn't bow down. So anyway, these people came to the king, and they began to spake unto him. So we know the reason he had brought. Why was these Jews brought into exile anyway, into captivity? Because judgment from God for being idolatrous. So they know for sure, Nebuchadnezzar know for sure, and he's up in the sure that they weren't going to bow down to another idol, because they know that's the reason they was in exile to begin with, because of their idolatrous practices. So they knew that they needed to not practice idolatry. And so that's why that's why these other musicians knew that if they could get them to worship these other gods, see, that's part of their plan. They give them Chaldean names, and they tried to teach them their culture so they could go back to their land and rule for the king. That was their strategy, and that was their plan. So they tried to do what? They tried to brainwash them. They tried to change their culture. They tried to change their mindset. And that's what they were trying to do. But we'll see here today that he wasn't able to do that. Even though they tried to do that, no, he brought them captive, that Nebuchadnezzar was not able to do what? He's not able to change their hearts. What's in your heart, lots of times people can try to change, but they can't change it. He tried to erase all their Hebrew heritage, didn't he? And teach them into their culture and their principles and their ways of life. So that's what they were doing here. But anyway, when they blowed this, made this music, they were all to bow down and worship. So once they blowed it, everybody probably bowed down and worshiped. But then they received, some of the Chaldeans accused the Jews of not bowing down. They spake unto King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. And notice what he said. They reminded the king of what he had said. He said, thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man shall hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, the dulcimer, and all kinds of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. So they was reminding the king. See, they was setting them up. They had already had in mind probably what they was going to do. They knew how they was going to get back at these Hebrew children who was faring much better than they were. And whosoever shall not fall down and worship, that he should be cast into the midst of a burning furnace. So they was reminding the king what his decree was, because the king favored these people. He promoted them, he favored Daniel and the three Hebrews, and he put them in high positions, and they were doing a great job for him. As Donald Trump said, they were doing a tremendous job. All kinds of attitudes described what a great job they was doing. So he probably had some favor for him. He really didn't want to do to him what he decided to do. But then there were they said, then there are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon. So he said, we didn't tell him, you've got these certain Jews that you set up over us, or over these affairs of the providence, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They have not served thy gods, nor worshipped the golden image which thou set up. So they brought three accusations against them, didn't they? They told them what? That they had not regarded the king, and they hadn't. They served not thy gods. They didn't serve. There was about 4 or 5 different, many 6 different gods they served there. Nor worship the golden image which thou set. And they said they didn't even bow down and worship the golden image that you said that everybody should bow down and worship. So that they begin to show here that they were going to be what? Faithful to God, and they were dedicated to God. And they were not going to do what the king commanded, but they were going to obey their king, wasn't they? They were going to be faithful and true unto him. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury. So it made him angry, didn't it? Because they had defied him. But he did this out of anger and rage and fury. And lots of times that's how we act. If we initially react out of rage and anger and fury, we'll probably do the wrong thing, won't we? Or do something too harshly. But if we'll think about it for a while and step back and take a breath, it's hard to do sometimes when you get triggered. He commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they brought these men before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true? So he asked them. So he's doing what? He just didn't tell them to go. He didn't automatically say go. So he was kind of keen that, buddy, when something went wrong, he would say, off with him or head off. But he knew these guys, and they were doing a great job for him. So he was kind of, basically, you might say, giving them a second chance. He said, Is it true? And they said, Is this true what they're telling me? Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? So he was giving them an opportunity to what? Escape death. He was giving them an opportunity to bow down and to worship the golden image they set up. Therefore, they might what? Save their lives. Now, there's a lot of people probably not willing to give their life for the gospel. I think Pastor Tim said, he's told us he is. He's ready to do it, and he's getting ready to do it. So we see now it says, Now if ye be ready, that at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, the trumpet, and the flute, and all these instruments again of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made. Well, he said. So he's giving them another chance. In other words, he said, when you hear this again, he's going to tell the musicians to what? Play the music again. He's going to give them an opportunity to escape death. Now, what would you have done in that situation? I know what we would like to think we would do. We'd like to think we'd do exactly what they did, but I don't know sometimes how many of us would and how many of us wouldn't. Darlene's laughing at me. I probably said something wrong.
I'm not laughing at you.
All right. But he said, Well, but if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? So he was telling them it's either bow or burn. Because he said, what God is there that's going to deliver you out of my hands? Even though before he had been humbled and said that the Hebrews' God was the God of gods and the Lord of lords and had done great things, but now he'd begin, after a period of time had passed by, he'd probably begin to draw back on that a little bit. Go ahead. I don't know how many people didn't bow down. If all the Jews didn't bow down, the only three it tells us that didn't bow down was who? What about Daniel? So evidently Daniel's not even in the picture here, and some people say that Daniel wasn't there because if you look at all the people that he called, one of the groups of people that he did not call was who? The magicians. And Daniel was considered a magician because he interpreted dreams. They said the magicians stayed at the entrance of the palace, therefore they didn't come there. But other Bible scholars believe that he had been sent on a journey and was out of the country on king's business. That's the reason he wasn't there. So we really don't know why he wasn't there. We just know that Daniel wasn't there, and they didn't bring any accusation against Daniel, but just these three. I mean, there could have been other Jews that didn't bow. I don't know. All the Jews know they weren't. The reason they was there because of idolatry, and there was probably other Jews that didn't bow. But the story just tells about these three. Doesn't mean there wasn't others that didn't bow. But this is what the story tells us just about these three. Has anybody else got any comment or any questions? Why? I didn't correct that later. I've done it both. Yeah, I've done it both ways, and I've had an I and a Y, and I just left it that way. But sometimes I had to do it on you automatically, but that was my doing. But anyway, you know what I meant. I can't spell. You can ask anybody I work with, anybody. You can ask them about spell. I cannot spell anything because after how you spell it, I cannot spell nothing. That's the reason I can't pronounce words good because I can't spell. But anyway, in the basic stuff, I'm very poor. Anyway. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this manner. It says we are not careful to answer thee in this manner. To me, I have a hard time understanding that. It means the exact opposite the way I read it. It means they're careful in the way that they answered it, and they're going to answer him with wisdom and with knowledge. But he says we are not careful. What the thing is, are we not? I think they're saying, are we not? See, I think I don't know if the translators messed it up, if that's the way it was actually written, but now, what do you think? How do you interpret that?
I think it means they carefully thought about it.
That's not what it reads, is it?
I know, not in our language.
Yeah, not in our language. It may have been their language. Except, if it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. So they said, God is able to deliver us out of your hand, out of the fiery furnace. And he's able to. But then they went on and said, but if not, but even if he doesn't, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. So here, Nebuchadnezzar was giving them a second chance. He was given them an opportunity to bow down. But they didn't take it, did they? You think Nebuchadnezzar really wanted to throw these three into that fiery furnace? I don't think he wanted to them because they were good rulers. They'd done a good job for him. Now, if you were an employer, you had employees, would you want to get rid of your best employees because they did? No, you do everything you can to try to find a way to keep them. Kind of reminds you like of Joseph. Remember Joseph and Potiphar's wife? When she went to Potiphar and said that Joseph tried to take advantage of her, you think Potiphar believed it? He didn't. Because if he believed it, he'd have done what? He was the executioner anyway. He would have went and had his head cut off. But he didn't believe his wife. But to save face, because he was the ruler and the one who could execute, he just put him in prison, didn't he? So I think the same thing here. He's trying to find a way out. Nebuchadnezzar trying to find a way out of his decree that he made. But he knew he had to honor it, or the people would disrespect him, wouldn't they? So I think he's trying to give him a second chance, or give him a way to get out of it. Then when Nebuchadnezzar, full of fury, and the form of his vintage was changed. So he got so mad that his vesture changed, and his face, look on his face changed. He was full of anger, and he changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It changed against him. See, he was really for him. He thought he could persuade them to bow down and to worship him and worship the image. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace. I don't know why it says once. Furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. So now he commanded them to do what? The furnace was already heated enough to where it could kill somebody when you throw them in it. Now he commanded them to increase the heat on it 7 times. So that was that. So maybe he'd just give them another chance here. Maybe he said 5, maybe scare them a little bit. Tell them I'm going to heat it 7 times. They'll bow down. They'll bow down. But we'll see if they didn't. And he commanded that the most mighty men that were in the army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats and their hosen and their hats and other garments and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. So how did they cast them in? Fully clothed. At that time they had different garments. They had a tunic that run all the way down to their feet, and they had a wool tunic that went over that, and they had a linen tunic under that, and they also had a turban on their head. Most Bible scholars said they wore a turban, and then they bound them. They took ropes and bound them up so that what? So they couldn't escape even if it's possible. So if you're floating in fire fully clothed, what does that mean? Probably going to catch on fire a lot quicker. Huh? And with just your flesh, I told you in naked, probably wouldn't burn hardly as quick, but your clothes are going to catch on fire right just like that. Your meat, take your meat a little while to get roasted. He did. So he gave him every opportunity, and he was trying to get out of his the penalty that he had pronounced upon those for not bowing and not bowing down to the image. It says, therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace was exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So this proves to us that the furnace was what? Really hot. It even consumed the men that took them and tried to throw them in and tried to throw them down. So that's how hot the furnace was. And you know, fire is hot. You ever burn very much stuff? I mean, burn boxes, stuff you can't hardly get. You have to get you a big stick and move around and poke it, and it about burns your face, and you burn your face real bad if you're not careful. But anyway, it says, and these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fire furnace. So it said they fell down into it. Now, I don't know. We don't have a description what the furnace looked like. Some say it looked like a dog bone, and they had a big top up here where they threw them in, but the king was down here in the bottom where he could see the bottom part, and they had like a channel that went down through when he dropped down through. I don't know. It's just, you just have to go back and study history and see what things looked like during that period of time, but you can get an idea of what kind of furnace they had. But it says, then Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste and spake and said unto his counselors, what, did not we cast three men bound into the midst of the fire? So did we cast three men bound into the midst of this fiery furnace? They answered and said unto the king, true, O king. And he answered and said, lo, I see four men loose, no longer bound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they what? Have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. So he said he's seen three men in there loose, not bound, and he's seen a fourth person there like the Son of God. Now what do you think about that statement, like the Son of God? How did he know that? Nobody knew about Jesus yet, did they? Nobody knew about anything about the Son of God and about. So that there's different. Now some people say in the Aramaic in that verse, there's no definite article, the Son of God. It should have been translated a Son of God, because they believed in many gods. That would go along more with what they said. So they thought it should be more like many gods. And well, as a matter of fact, that's what this one teacher says over here. He says the Aramaic phrase should have been translated a Son of God, which would more represent what it said here, or it could be. Go ahead. A Son of the God. That's the way most people say it should have been translated. They chose to put that definite article, the Son of God. And the reason I think it's really a Son of God, we'll get to that in a minute when we read over here. We see how when he talks about it again, what he calls. He doesn't call him a son of God. He calls him a what? Well, we'll read it here in a minute. He calls him an angel. So we know in the Old Testament times when he talked about sons of God, it was talking about what? Angelic beings. Now, maybe a lot of you don't believe that, but that most Bible scholars now tell you, and all the things you read when you talk about the sons of God is talking about angelic beings, created beings of God. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near, but notice what he said. He said, no. See what? Okay, we'll just go on. I'll say it here in a minute. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spake and said, Shadrach. Now he came near. I don't know how he got near without him burning up. But he maybe got to a place where he could, where the fire wasn't so big. But he hollered at him and told him and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you servants of the Most High God. Now he called them servants of what? The Most High God. He was already beginning to change his mind again, like he did before about the God that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego served. He called him the Most High God. Come forth hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth in the midst of the fire, and the princes and the governors and the captains and the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men upon whose bodies the fire had no power. So they looked like they was right before they threw them in. They still had their clothes on. They were still in good shape. Their body was still the same. And no hair of their head was singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire passed on them. And I know the one that gets me the best on that is the smell of fire. Because if you've ever burned anything and get around stuff burning, bud, you can't get that scent off of you. You can't go in the house with them clothes on. You have to take them off and lay them outside and let them air out, because that old stink of those fire and stuff you're burning is awful. That didn't even have that snitch on. A lot of people say, well, that's the same way that God's going to do what? In the end time, he's going to bring a third of them through the fire and refine them as gold and silver. And they'll come out without a snitch. See, that's the reason a lot of people say that this is kind of foreshadowing what? The Antichrist and what he will cause, and how he's going to bring the Jews through the Great Tribulation. Not all of them, but a third of them he said he was going to bring through. A lot of people says those he brings through the fire is who the 144,000 are sealed. And see how they can't be touched when God sends these trumpet judgments? They won't touch these. They're sealed with God, the ones that God sealed. And the ones that God seals, is it the church? Who did God seal to go through that? No, 144,000 Jews, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. These will go through untouched. And that's why a lot of people say, and then a lot of people say, and Daniel wasn't present. He was removed. Representing what? They said that represents the believers of the church that was removed. So they say that's a typology of the end time. Now some people say, no, that's not typology, because it's incorrect, because the church is not removed. They will go through great tribulation. And if you believe that, then it's not a typology for you. But that's just an opinion. That's just what typology that some people say use this to represent. Okay, let's go on. How much time we got? And said, then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel, and hath delivered his servants, and trusted in him, and have changed the king's word. See, he's changed my word, so he's more powerful than me. And yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own God. So they convinced the king, didn't he? But who did he say delivered them? The Son of God? In this verse, who did he say delivered him? The Son of God? An angel. He said an angel delivered him. Well, why did he change his mind over here from the Son of God to an angel? Because I don't think it really should have been translated the Son of God. I think it means a Son of God, an angel to deliver him. Now it may have been a theopathy. I can't hardly say that word. That most people is a theopathy is a what? It's a visitation of the pre-incarnate Christ. Some say it was Jesus in the fire with. Now, who it was, whether it was an angel. Now, there's mighty angels and all kinds of different angels, cherubim, seraphims, and there's Leviathan, and there's all kinds of different. There's about 7 different things. I wish I'd have wrote them down. There's all kinds of different beings that God has created, different things and there's orders to the angels. There's angelic. Angels have orders, and they have companies, and there's archangels. There's different angels have different rankings. They do different things. They do bidding for God. And they do things for God. And God commands them. They go forth and do things on His behalf. So it could have been an angel, or it could have been a theophany, the pre-incarnate. Now, sometimes I know in the Bible it was a theophany, the pre-incarnate Christ. Sometimes it could have been another angel. That's what we need to. That's what we need to get out of it. That it came from God. All right, let's see what else. All right. It says, therefore, now after he's seen this, so you see he changed his mind. He said, there's no other God that could deliver him except their God. And going on and said, so he admired them for what they did. So sometimes we might look like we're in a bad position and we're looked down upon, but if we stand true, in the end, you'll be the one that looks good. If we stay on God's side. Because God will always bring us through the fire. He always lifts us up. We might have to endure some things for a while. See, even during this exile, look how he treated these. Even though God's pronounced judgment on them, all these Jews got put in what? Good position, just like Joseph did. And was able to be a good Christian witness no matter what kind of environment and culture they were around. He says, therefore I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which spake anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces. Now he completely changed his decree, didn't he? But who did you say this is for? This is for nations, language, and anything. So this is what he was saying. People that's under his kingdom, and under his dominion, and under his rule, that if they spoke anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they shall be cut in pieces. And not only will they be cut in pieces, he said their houses would be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. Even though we serve all these different idol gods, none of our gods can deliver like this. So if anybody spoke anything against Daniel, the Jewish God, the one true God, they were going to be what? Cut in pieces. And their household, meaning what? Their house. It means their household, their families were going to be what? Made a dung. They was also going to be slain. So that was even a worse decree, wasn't it? Because if you was the head of your household and you said something bad against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, not only were you going to be slain, but also your whole household was made dunghill. But that means it's going to be burnt down or destroyed, or he wanted to wipe you off the face of the earth. What's the way I interpret that? And you interpret it how you want to. And it says, therefore, the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the providence of Babylon. So we see once again, once they remained faithful and true to their God, they got promotion out of it, and God rewarded them with even more victory. So it shows us here the king's anger towards Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego now changed to what? Admiration. According to Nebuchadnezzar, promoted them to a higher position in the administration of the king. How do you think it made them other magicians and those people who are accusing them feel? Well, we messed up again. Every time we go against these boys, we end up on that short end of the stick. Huh? Sometimes we feel like that way in life, don't we? No matter what we do, we always end up on the short end of the stick. But anybody else got any comment? Or if not, I'll try to go ahead and finish up. So our choice to obey God may sometimes lead to conflict. So serving God may not always be a bed of roses. Or as Tim says, Skittles and rainbows always. It's not always what we maybe hope it would be. But we hope to maintain peace with everyone, but we may be forced into decisions where we will stand in opposition to one person or another. So if you stand true to God, you're going to be in opposition against some people, aren't we? So no matter how difficult the test, God will give us the strength to make the right choices. The Apostle Paul said, no temptation have overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will provide a way so that you can endure it. So if we remain faithful to God, he will remain faithful to us. And if we don't remain faithful to God, sometimes we might have to suffer some things we could have got out of if we would remain faithful. Go ahead. So King Nebuchadnezzar, he showed that he could be humbled and recognize the God of gods and the Lord of lords. But then after a period of time, that's why a lot of people, they want to worship God for a period of time, but then after the trials and troubles and influences of the outside culture of the world, they begin to go back to their old ways sometimes, don't they? The dog turns back to his vomit sometimes, don't we? Yeah. That's the way of us, and God does something great for us sometimes. For a period of time, we may kind of forget about it, don't we? But we shouldn't. So it says, in order to face temptation effectively, we must prepare for it. So how do we prepare for temptation? We do. It says, in order to face temptation effectively, we must prepare for it. That is, we do not wait until we are tempted to decide whether or not we're going to be committed to God. You have keep your mind clean, keep your mind clear. You have to commit every day. As Tim says, you have to die out daily. As he gets up there and preaches, he says, I die out 1,000 deaths. Every time. Yes, you have to die out to yourself daily. We must make a commitment in advance that when the temptations comes, there is no question that we will obey God rather than the enemy. So we need to have a made-up mind, don't we? I mean, we've got to be prayed up, we've got to be read up, we've got to be filled up with God's Spirit. So if we're running low on reading God's Word, we're running low on our prayer life, and we're running low on spirituality, and then when those temptation comes, we may not be ready for it. We may falter. So we need to make our commitment to God when we then when we clothe ourselves with what? The whole armor of God. So that's why the Bible tells us to be clothed with the whole armor of God, that we might be able to stand strong when temptation comes. And finally, we are not alone when we are tested, because God walks with us through the fire. So we see here that God's always with us through the fire, and God takes people through the fire. And we know that the Hebrew children were very familiar with fire, and they saw fire as representing what? God and God's presence. So here's some examples. It says, the Hebrew trio would have known fire often represents the presence of God. God appeared to Abraham as a burning torch. He spoke to Moses in a burning bush. And in the wilderness, the Lord went in front of Israel as well as a pillar of fire. At Mount Sinai, the Lord came down in the midst of clouds, fire, and smoke. The Israelites were commanded to keep what? The fires on the altar burning continuously. For the Hebrews, fire was holy. Fire was a purifying element, and fire was the means of sacrifice to the Lord. Therefore, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not surprised to meet God in the midst of the fire. And God's going to bring a third of them through the fire, through the great tribulation, and purify them as this gold. And he says, who are these people that come through his fire? He said, they are my people, Daniel's people. Who was Daniel's people? The church? Israel. Now the church may be a part of it, and people say, not all Israel is Israel, but anyway, that's talking about all natural Israels. Just because you're a natural Jew doesn't mean you're part of Israel. You've got to believe in Messiah. But anyway, that's basically all I've got. So if anybody else got any comment, or speak up now or forever hold your peace, I guess. All right. I think it's why it says a son of God. Their gods. They had an image of their gods, what their gods. So, they believed in all kinds of different gods. Right. They didn't know anything about the Son of Man. I don't know if the rest of them seen it or not. If they looked in, I think the rest of them would have seen it too, probably. It don't say if they looked in. So it may have been Jesus. It may have been the Son of God. But but King Nebuchadnezzar didn't know. He didn't know anything about the Son of God. He didn't know anything about. That's what they're saying is it should have been translated a Son of God. Well, it's what in his mind what one of his false gods would look like. Or the one that, no, he really went on and said an angel. So he said Son of God there, but then the next time he mentioned, he called him what? An angel. So it could be like an angel of one of the other gods. Tell us what you think. I know you've got something in mind. You just won't say it. All right. I don't know how he come to that conclusion, but that's just evidently what he thought other gods. Right. Right.
I believe it could have been revelation that caused him to say, one like unto the Son of God.
I don't think he even knew God was going to have a son, but he thought, huh? I don't think he even knew God was going to have a son. That's why in the next verses he said, an angel has delivered them. See, their God, he probably thought their God had angels too. They believe in all kinds of beings. And there is all kinds of created beings. Seraphims, cherubims, Leviathan. There's all kinds of. We could go into these created beings and the wheel in the middle of the wheel and all these. And you're getting ready to see a lot of it in these UFOs revealings and all this stuff. These There's going to be a lot on that too. Well, it could be revelation, but you think he really meant the Son of God? So he knew God was going to have a son? Huh? No, that's what he called him, the Son of God. So he said it wasn't God, but it was what? That it wasn't God himself, but it could be like his son, like a. Huh? Oh yeah, he knew better than that. He knew it's something to do with Daniel's God, because he was the God of gods. He admitted that. But then over he said it was an angel that delivered him. So, and we can argue about that all we want to, but it don't. It could have been revelation, yeah. But it depends on which way it was translated properly. Was it a Son of God or the Son of God? All right.